Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
We have a little different version of the GeoGearHeads today with my usual host out today, and his co-host on the Caching in the Northwest podcast is filling in tonight. So I'm Daryl W4, welcoming Wits End to the show for the first time as the co-host, but you've actually helped out with 3 shows from the Lily Pad, and this is actually your second time on GeoGearHeads, right?
It is. I was on the beta episode 5. We talked about memory cards, and I'm excited to be back tonight. We talk about cameras, and memory cards fill right in with those, don't they?
Yeah, true. And that's actually where most of my experience with memory cards comes from.
Well, mine started out with PDAs. I got my old Palm Pilot, Pocket PC, those kind of things, as well as cameras. I think I even had a MP3 player. And I'm excited. Today we have another special guest with us, Northern Penguin. He's all the way from Canada, so welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Love talking about geocaching, love talking about my cameras, and all aspects of photography. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And one of the things we should probably get out of the way right away is all 3 of us are Nikon users. But that certainly isn't going to keep us from talking about other brands, and especially for some types of things, Nikon doesn't necessarily have the best cameras for the job. But I have to ask Northern Penguin, last time I ran into you at the Belle Isle caching event, you were planning on getting that new Nikon D800. Did you end up getting that?
Absolutely. And
Nice.
It was worth the wait. This is one heck of a camera and a considerable step up from my D200.
Yeah, and well, for the type of photography that you do, I think that FX sensor, or as the Canon users would call it, full frame, would really be, ideal.
It is ideal. I'm going to be honest. I've been calling the D800 my gateway drug to FX. Most of the lenses I own are actually the DX crop lenses, but I do have a couple that I pulled back from my film days, and I'm using those. My main kit lens, though, is I'm still walking around with the 18-200 DX.
Nice. Now, we're talking about the DSLRs. Those are the larger cameras, interchangeable lenses. But really, that's only for a small set of geocaches. I have a D90. This is my DSLR I carry around, but most of the time it's not what I take on the trail.
Yeah, of course, the DSLRs are really when you're out to make great images. I take my D700 out many times in hopes of capturing some great images, both landscapes and macros. But generally, I only take the iPhone or maybe a compact, and I like my Nikon Coolpix 300 most of the time.
Well, I pretty much carry my D800 everywhere. I've actually rigged up systems for it so that I can go hiking long distances with it, where I'll attach carabiners to the camera strap and get the weight off my neck. I went on an 80-kilometer hike with my my D200 last year, though I still do have my little Fuji for when I'm doing something stupid.
Sure. Well, I've noticed there's a capture clip system I've been eyeing that you talked about carabiners and straps. It looks pretty interesting. It's by Peak Design, and it's on the New York Times today. But when I go out on the trail, I take a little Canon power shot. So there's my tribute to Canon as well as Nikon.
Yeah, we're really talking about still photos, not videos. Many cameras will actually do both, but there are different options for looking at stuff to really capture mostly the video rather than just still. And before we really get lost in the subject, and with this panel I'm sure we will, I want to let our listeners and viewers know that the Bad Cop and I will be back next week for Beta episode 29 with Snicker from Muncie about their first year, and hopefully a little about what's coming. If you have any feedback for that or for any of our shows, you can call our voicemail line at 206-350-3647 or email address, and that's geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com, and you can email us audio files or text. We'll also be recording the show live through the Google Plus Hangout on Air feature at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Thursday the 19th. You can watch that live stream through Google Plus by circling the GeoGearHeads profile or through YouTube.
Very nice. I might have to turn in for that one, Daryl. You'd done a good series of blog posts a couple of years ago, photography for cachers, I believe, and it's still got a bunch of great information for all of us geocachers, including a list of camera types. Seems like it's not really what we're looking at these days.
Yeah, it's changed and provided a few more options since I put that list together. But generally, the classifications are pretty good as a frame of reference, and those are camera phones, compacts, super zooms, and SLRs. But really, at this point, I'd add in the new what they're calling evil cameras. And when you add in the video, there's like the action cameras, which really deserve their own category.
Yeah.
But most of the other common video cameras really could be shoehorned into those other 4 categories.
All right. So, reading from your original list, most of these are pretty obvious, and we probably don't want to take the time to completely read through them. But let's give our overall impressions of these categories and what each is best suited for, starting with the nearly ubiquitous camera phone. I've got my iPhone.
Yeah, I think we're all iPhone users as well here. And the real benefit to the camera phone, above and beyond everything else, is it's there with you always.
Yes. They say the best camera is the one you have with you.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to argue that a little bit because I've had problems taking pictures with that camera that I have with me, but yeah, generally it's true. And the other thing I really like about using the camera phone, especially when you're dealing with the smartphones, is you have that ability to post photos right there, get them up, and you've got the ability with the camera phones as well, and the smartphones, with to tie into those apps. So things like geocaching.com's official app will allow you to take the photos and attach them right to your logs right there. So if you're doing something like the Earth cache that requires you to post a photo with you at this location, or a photo of whatever, you can do that right in the field, and it does save a lot of time.
That makes it nice.
And the next one we'll probably want to touch on a little bit is the action camera, and this is the video as well as some still cameras. And in this, we're kind of overlapping with the next category as well. But these are cameras that are really built for the action stuff. They're not built necessarily to take the better, more involved photos. This is the stuff that you're going to strap on your body, you're going to strap it on your bike, parachute, whatever.
Yeah.
Things like the Contour and the GoPros are great action cameras. They're the ones that you can take underwater sometimes. They're the ones that can take the beating. But most of all, they're built to take more abuse than you'd want to give your typical point-and-shoot or DSLR even.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go ahead.
That's a camera for doing 5.5 caches.
Yeah, and that's a great camera if you're looking for that action stuff. Yeah, and that's why we call them the action cameras. I've got one. I've got one of the Contours, and I barely ever use it. The stuff that I take with me most of the time when I'm going caching and think I'm going to want a photo is that compact camera, and this is what a lot of people refer to as a point-and-shoot, but you can get these compact cameras that are way outside of just being a point-and-shoot. They're small. They have usually a zoom lens, an optical zoom lens, and that's so much better than having the digital or electronic zoom, whatever they're going to call that, because it does have that better quality when you're zoom. It's typically going to be, if you're looking at video stuff, having that optical zoom is going to be a lot more even and smooth action in the zoom too.
Yeah, I use the GoPro. I strapped it to my chest recently for a Terrain 5 cache that we did, and it was a lot of fun to look back at the video that way. But its niche is that wide-angle field of view. It doesn't have the zoom, and it doesn't have the best low-light capability, but it makes up for it because its size. You can get it almost anywhere. Its bracketry straps, you can strap it to almost anything, and that field of view is just unparalleled.
Yeah, and it's a fairly lightweight, nice, easy camera. And I've got like the Lumix, what is this one called? It's a DMC TS1. That's one of those weatherproof, all-in-one kind of still cameras that also does video. And this thing is awesome on the trail. I wouldn't want to strap it on my head. It's really more like one of the compact cameras, but because it has the waterproof casing, and I have actually taken this and tried taking underwater photos with it, and it does work. I wouldn't do too much with it because I don't want to risk it any more than I have to.
Sure.
But it's nice to have that just for the ability to keep the sand and dust and things like that out. You don't have to worry quite so much about killing it when you drop it. And a lot of those compacts are very, very fragile. You'll find if you drop it with a lens zoomed out on a lot of the more affordable compacts, you'll find that your camera's toast. It will actually jam and you can't retract it, or it stops focusing, it knocks the elements out of alignment. So that's the real problem I have with taking a compact on the trail, and why I like kind of that crossover between the action and the compact. And as I said before, I generally take my Nikon Coolpix P300 out on the trail, which is a compact camera. But the reason I like that one more than that Lumix is because it's built as a camera for the photography enthusiast. I still have full control if I want it. Its light capabilities are much lower light than the Lumix could ever do. And I get some of those features that you look for from the bigger cameras, like that shallow depth of field, because that's what it's really built for. And this is why I don't like calling the compacts point and shoots, because it will still operate as a point and shoot, but it does so much more than your typical point and shoot would be able to do.
And what I do is I carry both when I'm out caching. My favorite type of geocache is a canoe trip. And what will happen is the D800 will be in the canoe in a dry bag in the event that we can't keep the canoe upright. The little Fuji XP21 that I carry with me, I call Greg is doing something stupid camera, is the one that's out while I'm paddling. It's the one that gets dropped. It's the one that comes out in the rain. Image quality-wise, this thing is, what is it, like 12 megapixels, 14 megapixels. My D200, which is 8 years older, just destroys it for image quality. This thing is absolutely useless once it gets dark, but it does video really quickly. I've actually gone snorkeling with this camera, and it was fine. So if I'm on a tree branch over a river in the middle of winter, this is my camera of choice.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll definitely want to bring up a little later, is the megapixels and megapixels or not megapixels thing. But let's move on through these categories a little bit, because the next one is one that I used to really like, and at this point I don't so much anymore, and that's the super zooms. Those are the bigger, essentially like point and shoot style cameras where you don't have the interchangeable lenses, but they're nice in that you get typically a really wide zoom range. So if you're looking for a smaller camera than a typical DSLR, you can get these things. They're usually cheaper. They don't have the interchangeable lenses, so you don't have to worry about things like dust as much.
Right.
But what I'm finding is the DSLRs have gotten so far now, and they're so much smaller, that the super zooms haven't really been able to keep up.
Well, and some of them are almost as big as carrying around an SLR camera.
Absolutely. And again, depending on what you're doing, this might be a better option than a DSLR, because the super zooms don't have those interchangeable lenses. So if you're out there in dirty or dustier environments where you might have to change lenses on a DSLR to get a wide shot, or switch out to your telephoto, the super zoom is doing it all in that one lens, that one body, and you never have to change the fittings or open it up, nothing like that. So it is a safer camera to be using in a lot of those situations, and it's generally less expensive.
I was going to say, they're usually less expensive than SLRs, and they're great, I think, for a family vacation that somebody doesn't necessarily want to play with aperture and shutter speed and go for effects. They just want to take good pictures, keep them in that green box program mode, or even in one of the scenes, and they work. They do a nice job.
Well, the thing that really the super zooms seem to excel at are for like bird watchers. Because DSLRs, no matter which one you get, you're going to need a really big lens. And these super zooms can do it with a smaller lens because they have the smaller chips, so they don't need as much glass to do that. And so that's where they really seem to excel, is for the bird watchers, you end up with a smaller, lighter weight camera. And when you're trying to take pictures of a bird, you're generally looking for the whole thing to be in focus, so you don't need that kind of control. But a lot of the cameras will give you that control if you want it. Just typically when you start zooming out at those further ranges, you're still not going to, you just get these broad depths of field. You're not going to get that nice shallow depth of field. If that's what you're looking for, you have to go for a big, expensive DSLR and lens.
The next category is evil cameras. Are they bad?
No, that stands for Electronic Viewfinder Interchangeable Lens.
Absolutely.
And these really came into popularity with the Olympus EP1s. Great, cool little cameras. This is kind of in that range of super zoom, compact, size-wise, but they have the interchangeable lenses. So that makes them really more flexible. They have the benefits of the little bit larger image sensor, but they have the downsides of having to take off the lens if you want to get some better zoom ranges and that kind of stuff. So again, it's not going. It's operating like the DSLRs do, where you have to change those lenses in and out if you want to go from ultra wide to ultra telephoto. So that's where the super zooms still kind of beat them out. But these typically are a much smaller option to the DSLRs. Give you the same kind of control and feel, just in a smaller, more flexible package. Maybe even not really more flexible, but you get a lot more bang for the size of the camera because it doesn't have that mirror box. And the whole point of a DSLR or just an SLR is that it is that single lens reflex, which means there's a mirror box behind that lens, and when you take a picture, that mirror actually has to lift up and drop down. So by getting rid of that, you end up with a much smaller camera that is a lot more flexible in many ways, electronically and mechanically, and you don't have that big mirror that could possibly fail.
Yeah, these cameras, these evil ones, are actually fairly interesting. We're at the infancy of that market right now. Some of the big names that I follow, like Trey Radcliffe, Stuck in Customs, they're talking about these cameras eventually coming up and even replacing the SLRs when they get their act together with them. Right now they've got some limitations, but it's a very interesting category, basically taking the mirror out and shrinking your SLR down while still maintaining a lot of the functionality.
And the quality, too, which has been the big problem with like the super zooms, is you don't generally have the same quality that you get from the better DSLRs.
Yeah, they're an exciting field to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem that I really have with these more than anything else is that electronic viewfinder. It makes it really tough to do manual focus. No matter how good it is, it's not going to be as comfortable as doing the manual focus through the SLR. However, if you're looking for video, this blows the pants off of the SLRs because you use that one viewfinder. It's a good viewfinder, and you're looking at exactly what's coming out of the camera. Yeah,
I've been struggling sometimes when I do video. If I shoot a video clip with my SLR, it's only because I didn't have anything else available at the time. It's still my primary still camera, and I use other things first for video.
Yeah. Most of the new SLRs do video, and they do a pretty good job with it, but it takes a certain skill level that you don't need with any of the other cameras that we've mentioned, really.
Right.
It's a whole new art form. It's getting more into that cinematic motion picture type of style. So really, you can do it, but you don't want to handhold. You want to have it on a tripod or in some kind of rig to help stabilize it. So I don't really recommend it. But when it comes to getting still images, this is still my very favorite one. Now, before we move away from the video, though, on the SLRs, Sony has some interesting things in some of their alpha cameras with a translucent mirror. So when they shoot video on some of the Sonys, they don't actually have to lift the mirror. They're shooting the video right through that mirror, and you can still use that wonderful Prism viewfinder as your viewfinder for video. So I haven't had a chance to look at one, but I hear that it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. That's interesting.
So we kind of talked about a lot of the basic types of cameras that are available out there, and before we move on to my next subject that I really kind of want to talk about, which is how to buy one, let's talk about that megapixel thing that Northern Penguin brought up. And megapixels aren't really megapixels. You'll find like a camera phone will say that it's 8 megapixels, but a 5 or 6 year old point and shoot camera does a better job with those 5 megapixel cameras than you get out of an 8 megapixel camera phone. So don't be fooled by megapixels. That's not going to tell you a whole lot. And in most cases, if you're just looking for stuff to post to the web, 5 megapixels is more than enough.
Oh, yeah. My D40 was my first SLR, my first DSLR. And it was, I don't know, it was 5 or 8 or something. It wasn't very big. And we did advertising here on the side of a truck that was 10 feet wide. They worked fine.
Yeah, there's all kinds of formulas that you can use to figure out resolution for size, but it doesn't take much. I had a number of photos off of my 6 megapixel D100 that we blew up to 24 by 36 inch, 2 foot by 3 foot poster, and even when you got up real close, because they were printed, you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, one thing that's really important to note with the megapixels and the size is people, of course this is from somebody who just bought a 36 megapixel SLR, but people will get into the megapixels being important when you're making prints, and if you're printing something that's 12 by 18 or 36 by 24, you're not looking at it from 4 inches away. People tend to back up when it's a poster size print. I sold some 12 by 18 prints, and we were having a discussion about the photo, and I said, yeah, this one isn't much. It's a 10 megapixel image from my D200. See here, look at the EXIF, and then, oops, I was wrong. It was actually a 6.1 megapixel image from my D70.
Yeah, most of the time, the megapixels don't really matter so much as the quality of the image, and there's a lot that goes into that, from the glass, the lenses that are in front of it. There's the low-pass filter, the way that it's calculating the, I've just totally forgotten the term for it, but they have a way to handle the data that comes off the sensor, and that, it's not as if the pixels that come in off the sensor are multicolor pixels right out of the gate, unless you're dealing with one of the Sigma cameras. They use a different type of sensor that actually stacks, so they are actually getting multicolor pixels. But each pixel is actually a different color. It's either green, red, or blue. And I think it was Fuji was actually doing some work where they had like a magenta pixel as well. So the pixels aren't even the number of pixels that you're really getting, because it has to interpolate all that data to get your color information for real colors that you can actually see. So I don't really put a whole lot of faith in the numbers of the megapixels. What it does mean, though, is you are going to have bigger files. And I hate to say Northern Penguin, that's one of the big reasons I didn't end up getting that D800, is because I kept thinking, wow, I'm dealing with 17 meg files right now for my compressed RAWs. That's got to be somewhere in the range of like 30 or 40 megs, and that's a whole lot more data than I want to deal with.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to deal with that, though, on a D800. One, I shoot with my crop lenses, which cuts it right down to 16 megapixels right there. And then, yeah, I mean, you can use the built-in camera crops, or you can, if I go out and shoot a raw image and then export an uncompressed TIFF file, I have a 120 meg file that pops out. So, yeah, the second thing I did after I bought my D800 was go to the store and buy bigger memory
and bigger
cards.
hard drives and all of that stuff. So, yeah, that's one thing that you really have to consider, is how are you going to deal with these bigger files, with the bigger image files that are coming off of these 36, 24 megapixel cameras, because it is a big issue to consider. Well, let's move on.
Big.
Yeah, indeed. Let's move on, though, to actually buying these things. And this has actually changed a bit. I used to be a big proponent for buying used. I loved getting used gear. I've got a ton of gear that I bought used. However, since the advent of digital, my mindset has changed. I've been always buying brand new DSLR bodies because I always have to have this new feature that's coming, because I've been pushing my bodies to their very limits, really until the D700. And that's the first camera that I've had where I'm not waiting on the camera so much, or I'm limited by the camera in what I wanted to do. However, I have issues even with getting some of the compact cameras on the used market, and a lot of that comes down to the batteries. And what we're finding now is the manufacturers for digital cameras end up changing batteries so often, unless it's something like the AA batteries or AAA batteries that the thing uses. You might have problems a year or two after you've bought that camera finding a replacement battery if the lithium battery or the NiCad battery or whatever it happened to have ends up dying. So that's something I think people really need to take a look at if they're going to be buying used. If you're getting something that uses a AA or AAA battery, or the likes of that, maybe an external battery pack, then it doesn't really matter so much, and buying used is a great way to go. There are some things to consider, but really you're going to save a lot of money, and especially if you're going out on the trail, it's a great way to limit your liability. You're not taking a camera out there that you spent $1,000 for the body. You're going to be taking something out that you spent $200-300.
Well, I know every camera I've bought lately has been used, but I'm on a pretty limited budget, so I sure dream and drool over the brand new ones. But
yeah, that's the other thing, is you can typically get a lot more bang for the buck. But when you are dealing with SLR cameras, the thing to remember is you want to put your money into the glass, into those lenses.
Definitely.
That's where the quality is. Now, again, if you're on the trail, you might want some cheaper lenses that you don't have to worry about so much. The more versatile lenses. Northern Penguin, you said that you had that 18-200, which is a nice broad range lens, but isn't necessarily one of the higher quality lenses as far as image goes.
No, eventually I'd like to get the Nikon Trinity, as it's called, the 2.8 lenses. But to pair it out, I mean, that would be $6,500 in lenses on top of the $3,000 camera body I just purchased. But those lenses also have drawbacks on the trail. The 2.8 24-70 weighs a lot more than my 18-200 DX lens does. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to throw the 3 Nikon Trinity lenses in your backpack, you're going to notice that at the end of a 20K hike.
Oh yeah, and I have those Trinity of lenses. I've actually got a lot more than that. I've got the 14-24, the 24-70, and the 70-200. Plus, I usually take out the 105 VR lens, the macro lens, as well. And that is quite a lot of weight. So when I go out on the trail and I want to take better pictures, typically I end up just limiting it to the 24-70. But I do also have the 28-300, which is essentially the full-frame version of that 18-200 that you've got. But the point being with getting into these lenses, this is a great way to save some money. Try to find these things used. Lenses typically aren't going to see the same kind of wear. They're not going to have the abuse that you'll see with the bodies. They typically end up lasting a lot better. And one of the reasons that you do want to go for some of the better quality lenses, like the 2.8 lenses that we're talking about from Nikon, is that those will quite frequently be weather sealed. So taking those out on the trail, you don't have to worry as much about the dirt, the dust, and the rain and moisture that you do with like that kit lens that you might have. If you have like that 18-55 that came with the camera, you have to be a little bit careful with that thing. You don't want to get it wet. You don't want to get too much dirt, dust on it, because that stuff can get in there and really destroy it. And we had lens that Firefly had taken to Africa when she went, and the thing was just absolutely destroyed by all of the dirt and dust. We had to send it in, and they had to do a complete rebuild and replace all kinds of parts because of all the dirt and dust that got in there. And it's like, pouring sand into engine parts essentially.
Yeah, and they're built with better components. I had a friend with an 18 to 55 kit lens that just flat broke the mounting shoe off because it's a plastic flange on it instead of the metal flanges on the bigger lenses.
Yeah, so when you're looking at, the point being, when you're looking at getting lenses used, you do want to steer away from those kit lenses. You want to look at the better lenses, but once you get into those better quality lenses, that's going to be a great deal. And I really, if you can, and you're looking at getting a good SLR kit, try to find some of these good quality lenses that you like used, get those, and then buy maybe the body new, because that, I think, is going to save you some money and get you some better quality gear down the road.
Yeah, about half my lenses are used lenses that I purchased, and I actually, one of the nice things I like is I bought a bunch of those lenses right when digital was just starting to take over, and it looked like film size lenses were going away. So that's half my my FX lenses where people just thought, oh, what am I going to use these 35mm lenses for? Of course, now the price is back up.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, I went and I had a whole series of nice lenses and ended up switching all of them out for the newer digital coated ones because I was having problems with the D2X and the D200 and the D300 even, where I was getting all kinds of weird issues happening with refractions and colors, and when you switch to the nano coat, as they're calling it on Nikon side, but it's DI from I think that's Tokina, it might be Tamron, but almost every manufacturer will have the digital coated lenses. Mm-hmm. And when you start getting into pixel peeping, you'll really see the difference at it. And at the time, I was doing these big posters and things and doing some really intense stuff. We were actually taking photos at the time inside boilers, looking for defects in the photos so that we could zoom in. We did any kind of issues in the optics were unacceptable in that kind of situation. So that's when I really started to critique the quality of the glass that I was using a little bit more. And at that point, the only way to get those nano coats, as they were calling it from Nikon, was to buy the brand new lenses. So I had to shell out a ton of cash to replace a lot of those lenses. Fortunately, a lot of the other lenses that I had ended up with, aside from the basic 2.8s, like my 24 to 120 VR, that thing I got cheap as a used lens, and I absolutely love having the option of those smaller lenses. So I have the more versatile, smaller, lighter weight lenses, but then I also have the bigger, better lenses that you don't really want to take out on the trail because they are so heavy and expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, the heavy and expensive is I'm going for a shoot and I want really good results. What I like about the DX lenses that are part of my Gateway drug program with the D800 though is I can go anywhere I want, and I'm going to pack two lenses, my Sigma 10 to 20 and my Nikon 18 to 200, and with that I can shoot just about anything I want.
So let's talk a little bit about what it is that we actually shoot when we're out there caching, because that does make a big difference as to what we're getting. And we've been talking a lot about shooting with the SLRs because when you're going out to shoot things like the landscapes, the macros of a flower or fungus, or maybe even that cache container, or maybe the telephoto shots of the birds or the leaves or whatever it might be, that's really when you want to get into that SLR. But there's a lot of times where I just want photos of the group. I want photos of myself and whatever it might be that I have to take a photo with, and that's when I like taking the compacts and the camera phones a lot of the time because it has a front-facing camera. So if I have to take a photo of me, that's my favorite camera to use because I can just flip to the front-facing camera and it's like looking at a mirror.
And it gives you that advantage, like we said earlier, of immediate postability.
Yeah, and I'm doing a lot of those where I'm posting those photos into Evernote notes with the answers for the cache, so I can email them and I can keep track of it and It's really nice when you're doing the puzzle caches to grab your camera phone and take a photo of a sign and do that where you're just dropping it right into the note. So that's a lot of what I do these days on the trail is actually photography more as note-taking.
Yep,
I do that at the store. Good.
Yeah, I was just saying, I do the exact same thing. If there's a code on a lid, or if I think there's a cache owner who's going to be, I want proof that you signed this log, I'm just going to snap a shot of the lid. I'm going to snap a shot of the cache page, and the other notes, clues. Can't count how many times we've been out with the BFL crew. We're on stage 14 of the multi-cache, and we're doing the math to find the final. And okay, are we sure about the number at stage 6? How far back was that? 3 kilometers. Okay, pull out the camera.
Yep. And I do a lot of that with the compact camera as well, in part because you can get better detail on the compact cameras with the better glass that they'll generally have than the camera phone. And so you can zoom in and you can check a little bit more detail than you get off of the iPhone, whatever model, or Android phone, Galaxy, whatever that might be. So that I do like using that for notes as well. But really, I like the compact camera more for those incidental photos, the photos of the group, the photos of the great cache container that you want to remember, the photos of that cool bridge or this neat fungus or whatever that might be.
Well, and I found recently I was out munzieing, found a munzie, couldn't get my phone in to get a clear picture of it, but I had my compact camera in my pocket, got a good clear photo of it, and was able to then shoot the barcode with my phone on the screen of the compact camera to capture the munzie. So,
okay.
We've just on that little topic, I just want to bring one thing up. The BFL crew, we've been munzieing as well. And one of the jokes we've had is one person will be going in to try and get first to scan. We'll literally have 7 people stacking the views of the iPhones, where one person's trying to scan off the other person's iPhone. We'll be 7, 8 phones deep, and all of us go bing at once.
Oh, awesome. We've tried that a few times. We actually crashed the server doing that.
Nice.
So it was you.
I don't know if we were actually the ones that crashed the server or if it was just coincidence, but yeah, we've done that a few times where we'll have 3 cameras there trying to get it. But kind of as an aside, another great use for the mirror function of the camera. How many of us have stopped carrying mirrors when we go caching and we just pull out the phone and use that to look under the railings on the bridge and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
Or use the phone as a flashlight.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is that I've gotten to the point where I'm just lazy, and so much of my cash bag stays in the car because I have the iPhone, which has the flashlight, which has the camera, which has the GPS. Mm-hmm. I hate doing that because it's all on that one little thing. But boy, is that so much nicer than carrying that big bag of junk.
It's convenient.
Yeah, as long as it's appropriate. I wouldn't take an iPhone solely on a 20K hike.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
to travel light. Your battery would be dead a quarter of the way through the hike.
Yeah, which is why I like the battery cases all the time, too. I almost never go out caching without a battery case, unless it's that, quick, I'm going to try for a cache at work or on my way to or from, or, sitting at the airport kind of stuff. Well, actually, when I'm sitting at the airport, I still have it on because I want to make sure that I'm going to not have problems with battery in the flight.
Or you find that outlet in the airport to sit next to and plug in.
Yeah, which you don't have in flight most of the time.
No.
All right, well, this is certainly a topic we're going to want to talk more about in the future, but I want to thank both of you for joining us. Before we wrap, we need to tell folks how to find Northern Penguin's really awesome, beautiful work. So before we part ways, what's the best way for them to find your stuff? Okay,
I post most of my work where I'm trying to get a good photo. The good stuff goes to 500px.com, which my username on there is Gregory Plow. And I'm also on Flickr, Gregory Plow on Flickr. I'm currently also doing a 365-day photography project, and that's over on Tumblr. That's gregory365.tumblr.com. Or, of course, there's my website, gregoryplow.com.
All right, and we'll drop links to that in the show notes so everyone can find that. And thanks again. You really do have some great stuff out there. And thanks to Wits End for filling in as co-host while the bad cop is busy.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. I'd be happy to fill in anytime you need.
We might have to take you up on that and do another one on cameras. But next week, Bad Cop is back, and we'll be joined by Snicker of Muncie. I hope everyone joins us then, and you can find that one live on the Google Plus Hangout on Air. That's July 19th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, or 1 p.m. on the 20th UTC. We'll have the audio version of that show in the feed at the usual time for the weekend, and you can always find all of our past shows at the Cacheamaniacs website.
And check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647 or by emailing geogearheads at cacheamaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Jim Paulitz and Daryl Wattenberg. The show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.